Every dynasty faces the same inevitable question. Not if they'll need to rebuild, but when. And more importantly, how do you transition from one era to the next without losing your identity, without abandoning what made you great in the first place? That's the question keeping Warriors management up at night. Because let me tell you something, the clock is ticking louder than most people want to admit. Welcome to Warriors News Fan Report, your home for the latest news updates and insider information on our beloved Golden State Warriors. I'm your host, and today we're diving deep into something that could define the next decade of Warriors basketball. Let me paint you a picture of where we are right now. Stephen Curry is still doing Stephen Curry things, dropping 30-point games like it's nothing, making shots that defy physics and logic. Draymond Green is still the heartbeat of our defense, the vocal leader who makes everyone around him better. Jimmy Butler is managing the second unit with veteran savvy. But here's the reality that nobody wants to talk about openly. Curry is 36 years old. Draymond is 34. Butler is 35. Al Horford is 38. We're watching legends play at an incredibly high level, but Father Time remains undefeated. Always has been, always will be. So the question isn't whether the Warriors need to start planning for the future. The question is whether they're already doing it. And if so, what does that plan actually look like? Because this isn't just about finding good players. This is about finding the right players. Players who fit the Warriors culture, who understand the system, who can thrive in the spotlight that comes with wearing that blue and gold jersey. Now, I want you to think about something for a second. What made the Warriors dynasty so special? Sure, we had generational talent in Curry. We had defensive genius in Draymond. We had Kevin Durant for those incredible years. But we also had something else. We had young, hungry guards who could create offense out of thin air. Guards who could take pressure off Curry, who could run the second unit, who could explode for 20 points in a quarter when we needed it most. Remember Jordan Poole in his prime Warriors days? That instant offense, that fearlessness, that ability to just get buckets when the offense stalled? That's what I'm talking about. And here's the thing. We haven't had that kind of dynamic guard play since Poole left. We've tried different combinations, different rotations, but there's been a gap. A real tangible gap in our offensive creation, especially when Curry sits. Butler does an admirable job running the second unit. And I'm not taking anything away from his contributions, but he's carrying a heavy load. We need another guard who can pressure the rim, collapse defenses, and score in bunches. Someone who brings that energy, that explosiveness, that makes defenders uncomfortable. The Western Conference right now is absolutely stacked with young talent. You've got teams built around players who are just entering their prime. Players who are 23, 24, 25 years old and getting better every single season. The Warriors are trying to compete with a core that's on the other side of 35. That's not sustainable long term, no matter how great Curry continues to be. So the front office has to be thinking 2, 3, 4 years down the line. They have to be scouting, evaluating, projecting which young players could eventually step into larger roles. And this is where things get really interesting. Because there's a name that's been circulating in draft circles, a name that's been connected to the Warriors in recent mock drafts, a player who has the exact skill set that Golden State desperately needs. But before I get to that, let me talk about what the Warriors should be looking for in the 2026 draft. Because it's not just about taking the best player available, although that's always important. It's about finding someone who fits the timeline, who addresses a need, who has the potential to grow into something special. One option is going big. Golden State ranks near the bottom of the league in rebounding rate this season. We get killed on the glass some nights, and it's been a consistent problem. We don't have a true long-term paint presence behind our current rotation, so drafting a legitimate big man makes sense on paper. Someone like a Damar from Michigan, who's 7'3", averaging 3 blocks per game and nearly 10 rebounds. That kind of size and rim protection will be valuable, especially as our current bigs age. Another option is adding wing depth. Someone like Duke's Dame Sayre, who's getting early praise for his spot-up shooting, transition finishing, and point-of-attack defense. His offensive game needs polish, but his physical tools and motor are impressive. Wings who can defend multiple positions and knock down threes are always valuable in today's NBA. That's not a controversial take. It's just reality. But here's what I keep coming back to. The Warriors' identity has always been about guard play, about ball movement, about creating advantages through dribble penetration and shooting. That's the DNA of this organization. That's what Curry revolutionized. So when you're thinking about the future, when you're thinking about who could eventually carry the torch, you have to prioritize guards who fit that mold. Guards who can handle the ball, make plays, and score at all three levels. And that brings me to the player I mentioned earlier. There's an Arkansas freshman right now who's turning heads across college basketball. He's averaging 16.8 points per game, 4.3 assists, and 2.5 threes. Those are solid numbers, but it's not just about the stats. It's about how he plays. It's about the confidence, the creativity, the ability to make something happen when the play breaks down. He's got shiftiness off the dribble, legitimate shot-making ability, and vision in ball screen situations. He finishes through contact at the rim. He can change speeds to keep defenders off balance, and he's not afraid to step into jumpers with confidence. Does any of this sound familiar? Because it should. This is the same profile that made Jordan Poole so valuable during his Warriors tenure. That blend of handle, burst, and instant offense scoring. That microwave ability to get hot and take over a quarter. Golden State thrived with that kind of threat coming off the bench, and they haven't really replaced it since Poole's departure. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. We're talking about the 2026 draft. That's still a year and a half away. Why are we discussing this now? Because smart organizations plan ahead. They identify talent early. They track development. They project how players might fit into their system. The Warriors can't afford to be reactive anymore. They need to be proactive. They need to have a clear vision for what comes after this current core. And according to Bleacher Report's Jonathan Wasserman, who's one of the most respected draft analysts in the business, he believes his Arkansas freshman could be the perfect fit for Golden State. In his latest 2026 mock draft, he has this player going to the Warriors. And honestly, when you break down the fit, it makes a ton of sense. The Warriors need a young, dynamic ball handler who can eventually grow into a larger role. Someone who can learn from Curry while he's still here, who can develop in the system, who can take over games when needed. If the Warriors draft this player, he'd likely start his career as a backup point guard. That's the logical role. But his upside stretches way beyond that. We're talking about someone who could potentially develop into a full-time lead guard, someone who could be Curry's successor, or at minimum, a long-term rotation piece who provides scoring punch and playmaking. The Warriors haven't had a young guard with this kind of on-ball dynamism in years, not since the early days of Poole, and even then, this player might have more natural playmaking ability. Let me be clear about something. Immediate impact from a 2026 rookie is unlikely. That's just the reality of where the Warriors are. Any player they draft is about the next era, not next season. Curry, Draymond, and Butler are going to be the focal points for however long they're still playing at a high level. But that's exactly why you draft a player like this. You give him time to develop, to learn the system, to get comfortable with the speed of the NBA game. You let him make mistakes in limited minutes, and then gradually increase his role as the veteran's age. Think about the development curve. A rookie in 2026 will be learning from one of the greatest point guards in NBA history. Can you imagine the value of practicing against Curry every day, watching his preparation, understanding his decision-making? That's an education you can't get anywhere else. And if this Arkansas freshman has the work ethic and basketball IQ to absorb those lessons, the ceiling is incredibly high. Now, I want to address the elephant in the room. Should the Warriors force a positional need, or should they just take the best player available? That's always the debate in draft rooms across the league. My take is this. If this guard is clearly the best talent on the board when the Warriors pick, you take him without hesitation. You don't overthink it. But if there are multiple players graded similarly, then positional value comes into play. If the choice is between this guard and a 7'3" rim protector who's also projected in the same range, then you have a real decision to make. But here's why I lean toward the guard. The Warriors' offensive system is built around ball movement, spacing, and guards who can create. That's not changing anytime soon. Even after Curry retires, the Warriors are going to want to play fast, shoot threes, and create advantages through dribble penetration. That's the organizational philosophy. So drafting a guard who embodies those principles makes sense from a continuity standpoint. You're not rebuilding from scratch. You're evolving. And let's talk about the intangible. This Arkansas freshman plays with a confidence that jumps off the screen. He's not tentative. He's not afraid of the moment. He takes big shots. He makes tough plays. He competes on both ends. Those are the kinds of traits that translate to the NBA. You can teach skills. You can improve shooting mechanics, but you can't teach fearlessness. Either a player has it or they don't. The comparisons to Poole are inevitable, and I think they're fair to a degree. But this player might actually be a better passer than Poole was at the same age. His assist numbers suggest real playmaking ability, not just scoring. That's important because the Warriors need guards who can run an offense, not just get buckets. They need someone who can make the right read and pick and roll, who can hit the open man, who can keep the ball moving. Golden State's biggest offensive gap right now is consistent second unit creation. When Curry sits, the offense can stagnate. Butler does his best to keep things moving, but it's a lot to ask one player to carry that entire load. Having another guard who can initiate offense, who can break down defenses, who can score in isolation when needed, that changes everything. It takes pressure off Butler. It gives the coaching staff more lineup flexibility. And it ensures that the offense doesn't completely crater when the starters rest. I also want to talk about athleticism because it matters. The NBA is getting younger, faster, and more athletic every single year. The Warriors need to inject some of that youthful energy into their roster. They need players who can push the pace, who can finish above the rim, who can guard quick guards on the perimeter. This Arkansas freshman brings all of that. He's got the burst to get to the rim, the athleticism to finish through contact, and the lateral quickness to stay in front of opposing guards. Now, let's talk about the name, because I know you've been waiting for it. We're talking about Darius Akuff, Jr., the Arkansas freshman who's been lighting it up in college basketball and who Bleacher Report has mocked to the Warriors in the 2026 draft. Akuff is exactly the kind of player Golden State should be targeting. Young, dynamic, skilled, and hungry. He fits the profile perfectly. Akuff's game is built for the modern NBA. He can shoot it from deep. He can create his own shot. He can make plays for others, and he's not afraid of contact. Those are the building blocks of a really good NBA guard. Does he need to develop? Absolutely. Every college player does. He'll need to get stronger, improve his defensive consistency, and adjust to the speed of the professional game. But the foundation is there. The talent is obvious. And here's the exciting part. If Akuff continues developing at his current rate, if he keeps putting up these kinds of numbers, if he shows improvement in the areas where he needs work, he could end up being one of the best guards in the 2026 draft class. That's not hyperbole. That's a realistic projection based on what he's shown so far. And if the Warriors are in position to draft him, it could be one of those franchise-altering moves that we look back on years from. Now, as the moment everything changed, I want to be realistic about expectations, though. Akuff isn't going to come in and average 20 points as a rookie. That's not how it works, especially on a team with established stars. But he could be a spark plug off the bench, someone who gives you 10 to 12 minutes of energy and production. And then in year 2, maybe that becomes 15 to 20 minutes. And by year 3, maybe he's a legitimate 6-man candidate. That's the development timeline we're talking about. The beauty of this potential pick is that it gives the Warriors options. If Akuff developed quickly, great. If he needs more time, that's fine too because Curry and Butler are still here. There's no pressure to rush him, no need to throw him into the fire before he's ready. He can learn, grow, and earn his minutes. That's the ideal situation for a young player. So where does this leave us? The Warriors are at a crossroad. They're still competing for championships right now, but they're also thinking about the future. They need to balance winning today with building for tomorrow. And drafting someone like Darius Akuff Jr. allows them to do both. They get a talented young guard who can contribute eventually, and they set themselves up for long-term success. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Akuff is the right pick for the Warriors in 2026? Would you rather see them go big and draft a center like a Dame Mara? Or maybe you prefer a wing like Dame Sayre? What's your priority for this team moving forward? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because I love hearing different perspectives from real Warriors fans who live and breathe this team every single day. This is the kind of decision that will define the next era of Warriors basketball. Getting it right means potentially extending our championship window for another decade. Getting it wrong means a longer rebuild. So the stakes are high. The pressure is real, and the front office has to nail this pick. But if Jonathan Wasserman's projection is correct, if Darius Akuff Jr. ends up in a Warriors uniform, I genuinely believe we could be looking at a future star. Someone who carries on the tradition of great Warriors guards, someone who keeps this franchise competitive for years to come. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the Warriors' future, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to Warriors News Fan Report, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. We're bringing you the latest news, the most detailed analysis, and the insider information you need to stay ahead of the curve. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Go Dubs!